welcome back to the Prime Focus Goalkeeping YouTube channel. Today we are going to have a little discussion about footwork. Footwork is the foundation of goalkeeping. It's one of the most important aspects of goalkeeping if you want to reach that next level. Having really solid footwork, being really quick, being agile, being balanced. We're going to talk about all of that today. All right, so when we think about footwork, a lot of goalkeepers, a lot of athletes in general, you think about, coach throwing out ladders or throwing out some cones and doing some lateral footwork or shuffling through, right? And so there's a time and a place for that, and there's benefits for that in order to increase your agility, your balance, your ability to move quickly. Today we're going to talk a little bit more about the specific goalkeeping aspect of footwork and how the different ways to utilize your footwork can either help or hinder your ability to move around the goal and make saves ultimately. All right, so we're going to head over here first. We're going to take a look at some of these basic footwork movements that you'll see a lot of times, whether it's in goalkeeper training, soccer practice, or just in general, agility-wise. We're talking about cones, lateral movement, moving forward and back through. We've got some cones moving forward. So a lot of times what you'll see is the basic movement moving laterally, going back and forth here to utilize your footwork there. Now, there's benefits for that, right? It's about goalkeepers figuring out how to drive their feet into the ground, how to be more powerful into the ground, which then helps you springboard, which then helps you with your quickness and your agility, your ability to move fast around the goal, right? But a lot of times you're not moving around the goal like this, right? So we've got to figure out how to translate that into movements into the goal, right? But looking at some of the basic movements of going laterally and driving your feet into the ground, the change of direction here, right? There's benefit here because it's all movement that we typically do in a goal, just in different varieties, right? Ability to move forward and back and stay balanced, right? So a lot of the things that I like to tell my goalkeepers when working on basic drills like this, simply just focusing on quickness, agility, is the balance of it, right? How do I move my body? How do I move like a goalkeeper while doing this drill, right? So thinking about how I get set, right? Instead of simply going through this drill and standing up, just wasting time, not really driving my feet into the ground, right? How do I get the most out of this drill so that I can then translate that into more goalkeeper-like movements, right? So thinking about my set position, how I get set here, how do I move like that through the drill? How do I stay in this position and drive my feet into the ground and get back? And I'm in that position, I'm balanced, I have control. That's one of the biggest things when we look at footwork, whether it's in here, whether it's in the goal, whether it's in a ladder, it's the control. And that's a lot of the issue for a lot of goalkeepers when they're trying to develop that speed and that quickness. They don't have the body control. And you won't see it a lot at the younger ages, but as they start to progress and goalkeepers start to become more athletic and understand how their body works and how to control their movements, you'll start to see that the balance is one of the biggest issues, that if they don't have that, then when they get into goal, a lot of times they're giving up soft goals because their balance isn't great. All right, so we'll move over here to something more similar to a ladder, right? We're talking about forward and back movement right now. So 2 feet going through, right? What does the balance look like as I'm doing that? Or sliding out and coming through. Now that's one of the biggest ones for me. That's where the balance aspect and the agility aspect is really big for me, right? Because you'll see a lot of goalkeepers, what I like to call skiing, right? We're on a soccer field, but a lot of goalkeepers like to go skiing. And we're going to talk about how that translates into the goal in a little bit, but thinking about the large movements out wide and where my momentum and my balance is going versus if I understand that I'm trying to move forward, I'm facing forward, maybe there's a striker, there's a ball, the coach is forward. How do I keep my feet tight? How do I keep my hips forward? How do I stay balanced and close to where I can get set at any time, right? Because thinking about if I'm going laterally and I'm out here, my balance isn't great, right? So I'm coming through a little bit faster. My balance is shifting from one side to the next so often that if my coach were to hit the ball when I'm here, right, it's a bit tougher here, as opposed to if I'm a little bit tighter to the cones, I can get set a little bit easier. So these are all things I want my goalkeepers to think about as we move through, whether it's lateral footwork, whether it's forward footwork through a ladder or cones. What does my balance look like? What does my footwork look like? And how does that going to translate into the goal? Now, let's move over here. This is one of the typical drills goalkeepers and goalkeeper coaches like to do to incorporate footwork with ball work. I'm a big fan of that. Anytime we start to work with the ball, I want to see how can I utilize the footwork portion of the drill to help my goalkeeper be more efficient with their movement. Right, so we're looking at 4-cone square, right? Movement out to each cone and then back into the middle. Ultimately, this is the set position, right? So it's anytime you're moving around the goal, anytime you're moving in a goalkeeper drill, it's, where's my set position? Where am I getting out of position? How do I get back into position? That's the biggest thing, because when you get into the goal, a lot of times we get caught out of position, and how do we efficiently move back into position to feel more comfortable? So looking at being in the middle here, biggest issue that I see with this drill right here and a lot of goalkeepers here is they're so worried about getting there and back as fast as possible, they're not utilizing their footwork in the best way that's going to translate into movement in the goal. So I'm in here and I'm moving, and a lot of times you're going to see here and push back in. Now thinking about how that translates to the goal, right? If I'm moving and taking large steps in the goal, now my balance is off, right? I can't really get set from here, and then pushing from here becomes a lot tougher. I'm not as effective when I'm so long and I'm trying to push, as opposed to pushing from here and getting a good push laterally, right? So thinking about, instead of simply reaching for that cone, how do I utilize my footwork, short, sharp steps to push back in and get in here, right? So movement out, controlled, and back in. Thinking about my balance, right? Not so much worried about getting there as fast as I can, right? I still want to be quick and powerful, but I want to be efficient with it. I want to be smart with it so that I can see the ball the whole time and be able to get set at any point. I can't get set from here. And that's the issue, right? So if I'm moving in the goal like that, there's a time and a place for taking large steps in the goal. We have to understand when to do it, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit. So the next thing that we also have to think about is that movement dropping off, right? What does that look like? Is it a crossover step, turning my hips away and then coming back? Or am I simply dropping off here, understanding where the cone is and moving forward, right? So biggest things in here, understanding the larger steps are really tough. You'll also see a hop into it, right? Thinking about if I'm hopping into my change of direction, right? It may give me a little bit more power, but while my feet are off the ground, that ball can be struck at any time. I can't get set when my feet are off the ground. So those are the little things we have to think about at all times, is like, how do I move in a way that I can get set and be ready for a strike? Because in a game, we don't know when the ball's coming. In a drill like this, we know we're gonna move out, we're gonna move back in, the ball's gonna come. But that's not how the game works. In a game, I may move here, someone may step in and take a strike earlier than I expect. So I have to be able to react here, as opposed to I'm out here, now the ball's coming. All right, so thinking about balance, body control, we want quickness, right? So that's some of the reason we do some of these other drills, because the quickness of driving my feet into the ground laterally now translates to now I do it naturally. Now I do it naturally when I'm moving in a way that's more goalkeeper-like. I naturally drive my feet into the ground and push, as opposed to just dragging them along the ground and slowly moving, or dragging along the ground, stepping in and pushing back. All right, so thinking about the balance, thinking about what type of footwork, the short, sharp steps that'll get you there. Let's move into the goal and let's talk about a few different things there. All right, so now we're in the goal, and now we're going to talk a little bit more about goalkeeper movements in the goal. All right, how it translates from the footwork that we do over there on the side into movements around the net. All right, so first thing we want to talk about is efficient footwork. This is a phrase that I use with my goalkeepers a lot of the time, and I want to explain it so that everyone understands it. Efficient footwork means that we're moving as quickly as possible in the direction of where the ball is going. Right? So if I think about the cone drill that we just had down there, and thinking about if I'm going to this upper right cone, it doesn't make sense for me to step over to my left to then go to my right. Now, thinking about that movement, a lot of times as goalkeepers, as athletes, we do have to get a little bit of momentum. So it tends to be that step a little bit backwards to drive forward. But a lot of times that little step backwards also means that little other step backwards with my right foot, and then I'm moving forward, right? These are little milliseconds, right? Half a second. These are little differences that tend to make the difference between me getting from one spot to the next early, on time, being set and ready, and that half a second late where I'm still moving and the striker's shooting, right? So understanding what efficient footwork looks like. If I'm here and I'm going upright, it's pushing off that left foot and pushing back, right? If I'm going back left, it's not and dropping off, it's back left, I open up and I'm here, all right? So we're talking about efficient footwork. So how does that translate into the goal? So the first thing I want to talk about, because this is a big debate with a lot of goalkeepers and a lot of goalkeeper coaches, right? The crossover step versus the lateral shuffle. Those are the two biggest ways that goalkeepers get around the goal. Now you'll see a lot on social media, a lot of goalkeepers sprinting across the goal to make saves. Not something you're going to see in a professional game very often, right? What we want to talk about is the crossover step versus a lateral push and when to use which one. Okay, so for instance, we've got a ball, we're set up for a shot on the angle. Striker has the ball at the 18. That ball gets played all the way across the 18, right? So all the way across the goal. We need to get on that side of the goal, right? How do we do that most efficiently within the game, understanding where players are, when a shot can come? That's what determines our footwork a lot of the times, okay? So if we're talking about, say, a breakaway, a 2v none, it's you and the two strikers. That ball gets played all the way across. We understand that as it travels across the 18, there's not another shot that could possibly come other than that striker on the other side of the goal. So a crossover step makes a lot of sense because we gain a ton of ground, right? In that instance right there, I've gained 2 yards simply by one step and two step, all right? Versus a lateral shuffle where I'm taking a few more steps to get to where I need to go. Now, when do we use a lateral shuffle in this position? Well, we have to think about if this is a more crowded situation where there's another striker right there, there's defenders right there, there's people in the middle, but ultimately the ball ends up out far, right? We can't simply just crossover step when the shot could potentially come from there, it could potentially come from there, it could potentially come from a number of places before it gets to the end destination. So understanding that when that ball's played across and there's traffic, right, how do we move efficiently? Because like we talked about before, at any point, we may need to get set. So you'll see it a lot with goalkeepers. That ball gets played across and automatically we're crossing over and we're here when that shot happens to come from more inside, right? We're anticipating that ball going all the way across and instead it goes here and we end up getting beat because we're not set, we're not squared up to the ball, we're not ready to react. And to go along with that, we talked about balance earlier. We have to think about the momentum with our footwork. Body control and momentum are huge. If I'm moving here, regardless of if it's a crossover or not, my momentum is going left. At some point, I have to kill that momentum, get set, and get my weight forward and towards the ball, right? So whether it's all the way across and I'm getting here, at some point, I have to stop my momentum. I can't keep moving to my left. And you'll see that a lot with goalkeepers, especially in situations, cutback balls, right? A lot of times I'm on the post here, that ball gets cut back, I'm moving to my left, and as the striker goes to strike, my footwork, my momentum is still taking me to my left, and now I'm here as the ball struck. If it's struck to my left, yeah, I could potentially make a really good save. But if it's struck at me or to my right side, it makes it really difficult to get back. So thinking about efficiency with footwork, we talked about the smaller steps, that ball gets cut back. How do I go here? How do I go here? And at some point, I get here because I want to react to the strike. I kill my momentum from going left because we don't know where the ball's going in a game-like situation, right? In a game, the striker could step in and put that top corner, bottom corner, far post, wherever it may be. We have to be able to react either way. And when we're here, we don't have the body control we need, we don't have the ability to react back this way as well as we would want to. All right, so thinking about these movements across the goal, these large steps, right? Taller goalkeepers tend to take longer steps. That's the adjustment that you have to make when you're working with smaller goalkeepers or shorter goalkeepers versus taller goalkeepers. The legs are a little bit longer and that footwork tends to change a little bit, but still, taller goalkeepers have to have efficient footwork. They have to have the body control. They have to have those steps that'll be able to get them set whenever they need to. Now, those longer steps help them out when they're doing a crossover step and getting across the goal a little bit more, but it all depends on the goalkeeper in terms of what the footwork looks like in each specific situation, right? But the basics of it are the balance, right? Balance is huge. So we've talked about it, and we're going to keep hammering it in. Balance, balance, balance. Being able to control your body as you move throughout the goal. That's when you see some of those world-class saves or reaction saves or pushing back in a counter movement in a direction where they're not moving, right? A lot of it is balance. A lot of it is body control. A lot of it is efficient footwork. It's not always large steps because the large steps just don't allow you to adjust as well as the shorter, sharper ones, right? So understand the situation. Is there room for me to take those 3-4 yards in larger steps and get across the goal? Or do I have to be aware of who's going to step in and potentially shoot, where the ball is going, and what the situation looks like? So that's what we have to understand when taking the footwork that we do simply just for agility and power and quickness, and translating it into drills that we do with balls, and then how do we translate that into the goal? What does my movement look like there? All right, so understanding as you're looking to improve your footwork as a goalkeeper, there's benefits for ladders, there's benefits for cones, right? It helps you with certain things, but you have to figure out how that translates into a game-like situation. You have to figure out how what you're doing may help or hinder your ability to make saves and your movement around the goal. And so those are the biggest things to understand with footwork. I think we've covered a majority of what we want to talk about today. If you have any questions, be sure to share those in the comments. But for our footwork tutorial, that's it. So until next time, stay focused.